This is the ASUS CM34 FLIP Chromebook, and it happens to be part of the first batch of higher-end Chromebooks that launched more than a year ago under the Chromebook Plus banner. And yes, you heard right guys, this laptop celebrated its first birthday a couple of months ago, so consider this a sort of 1 year later long-term review, not just of one of the best mid-range convertible Chromebooks, but also to prove that Chromebook Plus hasn't really changed all that much in that time. So real quick, the ASUS CM34 FLIP Chromebook, at least in this configuration, retails for $500. It comes in only one colorway, and powering the whole thing is an AMD Ryzen 3 7320C running at 2.4 GHz, and there's also a Radeon 610M integrated GPU. There's 8 gigs of DDR5 RAM paired with 128 gigs M.2 SSD, which is pretty darn amazing for this price. And this thing has a 14-inch 1610 IPS touchscreen running at 60 Hz refresh rate with 300 maximum nits. I'm not sure if it'll show up on the camera, but at the top of the display there is a full HD webcam. That means 1080p, really nice and sharp, with a privacy slider plus 2 mics on the left and right for calls. The weight of this thing is quite hefty, 4.08 pounds, and I think a lot of it goes to the battery, because the battery life on this thing is 15.8 hours with the display at 50% brightness during my time testing this, running a standard benchmark test. In terms of ports, this has 2 USB-Cs, which is pretty much the norm for Chromebooks, a USB-A and an HDMI 2.1, which is great to see, a 3.5mm audio port, a Kensington slot, and also has a Titan C security chip built in, and a micro SD card slot. Let me ask you this. Have you ever been cut from a team or a group, not because you completely suck, but because you were borderline not okay in just maybe 1 or 2 things? That's exactly what regular Chromebooks have been feeling all this time. Since Google started this whole Chromebook Plus boys club, the segregation has been real, guys. So to qualify, you have to have a certain generation of chipset and 1080p camera, so even higher end devices from even a year and a half ago that are still ridiculously powerful, mind you, can't access Chromebook Plus exclusives like Magic Eraser, Magic Editor, Adobe Firefly, and Photoshop, all those AI generated stuff. And I think it's BS when you think about it. It kinda sounds similar to the criteria Microsoft came up with in order for machines to upgrade from Windows 10 to 11. Remember that? But anyways, if you haven't noticed already, the ASUS is part of the Chromebook Plus club, like just barely. Now, while the $850 CX34 sports an Intel Core i7 16 gigs DDR4X RAM and a fantastic 144Hz 1610 nano edge display, the CM34 gets around with less flash than that, and that's totally fine. I can multitask and multi-window up the wazoo without really breaking a sweat, plus keeping heat in check. Occasionally there is a stutter, but the machine quickly recomposes itself for what it's worth. A year later though, this thing still kills it with the Chromebook Plus exclusives and cloud gaming, I'll tell you what. For me, physical interfaces like the display, the keyboard, the touchpad are all important things I consider when buying any laptop, and this ASUS presents itself surprisingly well. And I think 16:10 ratio displays are a great in-betweener size for media consumption, but also give that extra bit of height for typing documents or spreadsheets. I would have liked to see a brighter display. We should be having 450 nits as standard by now. I mean, 300 nits on this, it's good enough when sitting by a window on a sunny day, I guess, but definitely not for outdoors, especially combined with the gloss on this panel. Colors, as you can see, are punchy though, and the touchscreen is responsive, if a little sticky to the touch at times. Keyboard warriors will approve of the full-size keys with 1.5 mils of travel. The backlight is a simple single color, no RGB customization here, no big deal there. Dollar for dollar, I still prefer Acer's typing experience more so, but I typed this entire script on this device without complaints, so there you go. Wow, the touchpad is a joy to use, lots of real estate and clicky where it counts. Now, battery life was one of the biggest surprises for me too, and proves that the Ryzen 3 7 series is a battery sipper. It's like an Energizer bunny on steroids, in fact. I could easily power through 13 to 15 hours per day on average, no problem. Port selection is on par with others at this price, and the build, I would say, feels like something out of an enterprise laptop, and that's a good thing. Like, there's good screen flex resistance and a strong keyboard deck. The CM34 feels tough and tankish. And oh, speaking of tankish, WTF, this thing weighs like a ton of bricks. I mean, it's fantastic for like self-defense to throw at somebody, or if you miss arm days at the gym. But the heft feels like disjointedly high for its 14-inch footprint. So if you plan on toting this around from class to class, or if you're tablet moding this thing for long periods of time, you just know what you're getting yourself into. Now, on the flip side, the weight makes opening the lid one-handed a cinch. So even 1 year later, the CM34 from ASUS remains one of the more solid Chromebook Plus experiences out there. Assuming you can still find it at the stores, that is. But what it and this video highlights, hopefully, is that Chromebook Plus as a program is less hit and more miss, I think. Most of the exclusives aren't really all that special or groundbreaking anymore, and they haven't changed it all that much, which means most users probably won't care, and I don't blame them. With Chromebook Plus, I get that Google wants to drag Chromebooks out of the whole Chromebooks are for classroom stigma by going higher end and perhaps to compete with Apple's MacBook Air. But why not go all in and give us a proper new Pixelbook? Come on, Google, come on.